you've got to form a super league. Like Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti called you and said, Cole, we're getting this done. We'll go get the teams that you say we need to go get. You got to form the super league. How many teams and how are you doing it?
Is it a super league or is it two that are going to
right? Is it like
nice
Big Ten's the AFC and
right.
the SEC's the NFC? That's another good question. Like, do they have to have an equal number of teams?
Because do
they only play each other?
Yeah, there are a lot of people that'll tell you when Greg Sankey floated we'll have our own playoff at SEC Media Days that this was kind of the reason why. That if we were to go far enough down this road that, well, we can have our own playoff, they can have their playoff. He just didn't say that part out loud. And then we'll play each other for a national championship. It's just that easy. And we get the rights to all of our playoff games. They get the rights to all their playoff games. So if they all want to all be on Fox, have fun with it. Good luck. We'll be all on ESPN. And then every other year, the national championship game will rotate and we'll have a way to get a handshake agreement on the sites and where it is. We'll split that right down the middle and everybody will be happy, which I do think you have to, at least in the back of your brain, have a little bit of a conversation with yourself of, so how long is that playing nice on the playground going to last? Because
the AFL and the NFL, I think, played that game for 3 years before they decided, why don't we just merge this whole thing?
Yeah. So then there's that. All right. So where are we right now? 32 teams, 34 teams. So we would have to get to maybe 50. I think 50 and 60 might be too big, to be perfectly honest.
48 would allow you to have, I'm thinking evenly divisible numbers with a lot of factorial. So like 48 to me, if you wanted to have 8 6-team divisions across, or it'd be 24 each conference if you wanted to do it that way, however you wanted to do that. But then you could distribute it geographically. You could distribute it competitive. You could even have, and this is the part that I'm not sure if college football fans want this or don't. Like I get comments either way. I'll have people say, how do you take the subjectivity out of who makes the playoff? Well, the way you do it is you have evenly balanced competitive divisions.
Right.
And you just make rules like the NFL does. These teams get in the playoff based on a record. And you could conceivably do that. But like getting to the 48, which means you would be able to add 14 teams from outside the SEC and the Big Ten. It would be the freaking Hunger Games.
Oh, are you kidding?
To figure out who those teams are. Like we know Clemson and Florida State would be among them. But like I don't think you can have major, like I want to see Kansas State and Utah as part of major college football. Like I want the schools that have these these rabid fan bases, not the biggest fan base in the world, but super rabid. Like I don't want a situation where Avery Johnson, who's going to be Kansas State's quarterback, who I'm super excited about, who's from Kansas, I don't want him to have a situation where he feels like he has to leave his home state to go play big time football.
Right. So let me ask you this, and I thought it was really interesting that if you go back to when the SEC added Missouri and Texas A&M, that the footprint and the media markets and the market side, like that was all people talked about. That was it. And I feel like in this last round, it was almost all brand recognition.
Right. It's brand recognition. It's passion. It's how many people are going to total watch. We don't care where they are. But and the reason for that was when Missouri and A&M went to the SEC, when Rutgers and Maryland went to the Big Ten, it was peak cable.
Yep, networks.
Everybody was basing it on the dollar something subscription fee that you get from each person in your footprint who has your network. And so they were trying to collect footprint. Now it does that's it's a way to make money, but they're going to be selling it nationally. It's not going to be done the same way. So it is, who's going to watch these games?
So let's start this way. What's at the top of your list?
Florida State, Clemson.
No, I'm saying if you're checking boxes, is it those rabid fan bases you mentioned? Is it just like overall popularity?
If I put their logo next to my good team's logos, does everybody want to watch this game?
Right, the interest meter. Where does okay?
So like if I put that Clemson Tiger Paw next to an Ohio State logo, do you want to watch that game? If I put the Tiger Paw next to an Auburn logo, do you want to watch that? And absolutely, you're watching that game.
All right, so ACC, you mentioned it. Clemson, Florida State are in. I think Miami is 100% in. I think Virginia Tech is in.
I think they should be. I think NC State also should be.
NC State was going to be next on my list. Yes.
And North Carolina is a big brand. People love the blue and the Argyle.
They are. I would,
but not a great football program.
I would have them in. Correct. But like you said before, we don't necessarily need teams that are going to just go win national championships every year.
Yeah.
For some reason, every time all this comes up, Virginia's thrown out in front of a lot of other teams. Not by me, but by a lot of people smarter than I am. So,
because the Big Ten and the SEC both covet the University of Virginia, like being associated with the University of Virginia.
Man, that's weird. I mean, nothing against Virginia. I mean, it's just, but it's just, it doesn't feel like it belongs with a lot of these other things we're going to talk about. But that's okay. Go for it. Fine, great, have it. I would think Pitt would have to be one of those schools that you're talking about.
I think so too.
As far as just recognition, brand, value, what people want, I think that would have to be there. And then, man, the Big 12 gets BYU's got to be in. I think BYU's in.
Agreed. And Utah has to be in too.
I think Utah's in. And I think if you're smart, you bring Oklahoma State back in.
Absolutely. And Kansas State.
Like you said, because of the logos we can put next to one another and drive revenue and sell those in different ways and give the games different names, which gives us more licensing opportunities. That's a word that I think a lot of fans need to familiarize themselves with and maybe do a little extra research as to what licensing actually can be. And it's not just, okay, we license our radio rights out to Learfield, or Under Armour is able to license our logo on their apparel. It can go a lot further than that. And I think that's something that when we start talking about private equity is going to be a major part of it.
You're talking about finding ways to get even more corporate money into the sport.
Correct.
Basically. And that is what these private equity people will do.
Yeah. So when I can sell Bedlam to Exxon, let's just say, and it's the Exxon Bedlam game, or Bedlam presented by Exxon, even if there's another brand, let's just hypothetically use, Baylor or BYU, that is a traditional, better football brand, it might not be as equitable as far as how we can license the game that we know we're going to have every year. So we just got an extra $50 million a year because we know these two teams are going to play every year. Those are the kind of things that I think people are going to have to start looking at. You're just going to have to.
It's crazy. So we had 14 spots. I think we filled most of them. I think we got a couple left, but so TCU and Baylor, you're not out of the hunt yet.
No, I think they would be in the discussion. I think West Virginia has to be in the discussion.
Yes, absolutely. That's another one. Rabid fan, like people. I do think. Will you subscribe to this service? Because like ESPN and Fox are getting together to form that streaming service and all that. Like, will you subscribe to this service to watch? If you can say that,
you're not asking me that.
No. I'm saying, well, 2 million West Virginia fans pay us however many dollars a month.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. You're in.
You're in 100%. And then see, this is what I think might be most interesting about it is I go back to what SMU just did to get into the ACC. And if you think back to what Fred Smith proposed for Memphis the last time, not this last time, but the previous time, they wanted to get
the FedEx CEO. Yeah.
Right. When he basically said, how about we don't need any of your money for the next 5 years? I'll float us. To which I still kind of can't believe nobody was taking you up on that deal.
No,
and that somebody actually posed that deal, but it kind of shows you what he's capable of doing. I don't think that stuff's going to matter. I really don't, because I think there's going to be so much money thrown at this, and they know that there's going to be so much money that could potentially made. You almost don't want that guy. It's like the Skulls. You remember that stupid movie back in the day?
Yeah, with Pacey from Dawson's Creek.
You might be the coolest and the best looking or the best athlete, but if your parents don't have X amount of dollars, we really don't want you here. We're not looking for that. So I think it's kind of that situation where all these teams that are going to probably be trying to cut these deals to get in, I'm not sure that's going to matter at all. I think the most interesting part is, either if we're talking about expanding or we're talking about this private equity portion of this is, and I had 2 really long conversations yesterday with people that are very familiar with things like this and know this. How do you place a value on a college football program? And you guys don't tweet me with your Texas made $182 million.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
I'm not talking about that.
We're talking about why the Cowboys are worth like $10 billion, right? If you if you valued, if you tried to buy them from Jerry Jones right now.
Create that valuation for them. How do you create a valuation for Alabama football or Texas football or Clemson football? And the main reason I think it's confusing is because a very large portion of what is equitable with them has been essentially given to them.
Right. The stadium, the land the stadium sits on, all of these things, the brand name of the university.
Let's go to Auburn's new facility that they have.
Yeah.
Or Clemson has a putting green and a slide. Well, people gave money for that, not because you were worth a lot, not because they wanted to adjust your worth or value. They just like you, so they gave you that money. So are you technically worth? Like, does that equate to part of what you're worth, what people have or will continue to give you? Like, I literally have no idea how that portion of it would work. And then, like you said, some of these are land grant institutions.
Yes.
I don't know how that goes. And I think what you're going to see is things like stadiums and arenas that for about 320 days a year are vacant and being wasted. That's going to go away. They're going to find a ton of ways to start using those things. I think.
Are you saying I might get Taylor Swift at the Swamp 5 miles from my house? Let's make this happen. My daughter would go crazy.
There you go. I think that those kind of things. I think, like, I know in Alabama we rotate Bryant Denny and Jordan Hare for the high school playoffs. Like, things like that are just going to continue to go up. I think you could probably start outsourcing your stadium to other smaller colleges so they don't have to build a new stadium. Like, why are our feelings hurt if Alabama A&M wants to come play in Tuscaloosa? Who cares? If we can make $180,000 when we're playing in College Station for that to happen, hi-oh, here we come. We'll go do it. Who cares? A lot of that stuff's going to start happening. And I think one thing that's actually really cool, there's not a lot cool about this if it does happen, in my opinion, but one thing that could be cool that happens is NIL, or what we deem it.
Right.
You and I have talked about this. It's not what it is right now. I actually think you would start seeing that become very real.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark has real NIL money. Like, Nike pays Caitlin Clark to endorse them. Like, that's real NIL. That's not a salary.
So now I can come to, if my private equity firm owns a portion of, or the majority of, or I think it will probably end up being described as some sort of a revenue sharing model. It's not going to be ownership. I don't even know if that's going to be allowed in a lot of these cases, but I'll be able to come in with my money that I've given you to do whatever you need to do with, and I'll own the licensing. But now I can take Andy Staples and utilize one of my companies, because I don't have to go pay you extra to put the Florida logo on it. I've already got that. So now I can go to you and I don't have to overpay you by however X amount, because we're already paying you to be on the team. I'm like, hey, we're going to throw you an extra 10 grand. You know, we would like for you to go do a Freddy's Pizza commercial. And you're actually going to see that be real. And it's not going to be overinflated numbers. It's not going to be enticement. It's going to be, hey, we can put you in a uniform in this commercial because this guy owns that company that technically owns 3/4 of our football program. So
it all sounds so insane, but it's more real than anybody believes, and it's closer than anybody thinks. And I'm fascinated, Cole, to see how this all shakes out, because everybody's going to have to figure it out on the fly. The Greg Sankeys and the Tony Petittis of the world obviously have a head start on the rest of us. They know more than we do. But they're the ones that are going to have to be dealing with, like, this court case just came down. This ruling just came down. How do you adjust to that?
We think there's lawsuits now.
Yeah.
Wait till those two say we ain't playing with you anymore.
Oh, boy.
Thomas Mars doesn't have enough cell phones. Like, he's
and the thing is, like, will you still watch? Like, I love watching college football.
Yeah.
I love watching Maction. I love, it doesn't matter to me. Obviously I want to see the bigger games, but if it's on, I'm watching it. Like, the question is, will there be enough of an audience for those? I don't think that audience necessarily changes.
No. And I asked, we had Thamel on the show earlier in the week, And I asked him, I said, Pete, I said, I understand where this is going and where it looks like it's going. It's changed a couple of times. I said, have you heard anyone anywhere mention anything about a contingency plan for the rest of it? Just the rest of college football. So if these two say, we're out, and here are the other 20 teams coming with us, 18, whatever that is anyone even talking about that? Like, is there a preliminary discussion as to, okay, I got this guy that I think we can call that would at least put up a chunk of what we would need to kind of start us in the direction of doing this? And he said, absolutely not. Not a single thing. No one. And I don't know who that person is. Like, who is the Greg Sankey of that? Well, that can start having those conversations, because somebody needs to, Andy, honestly, and I think you and I would say this for the same reasons. For the good of what would be left for them, somebody's got to start having that real talk of, hey, guys, there's a good chance we're going to get left behind here. Let's have a life raft. Like, we're allowed to take life preservers on this cruise ship.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and pack them. All right. We don't need to swim
I think you'd ask the people at Washington State and Oregon State how that works, because they've been having to do that for the last year now. So, like, they probably understand it better than everybody else. But you're right.
Who is that? Like, what umbrella would that person be under? Is that a Mark Cuban? Question. Is that somebody formerly in college athletics? Is that
right? Because I think there's some money to be made. I think that's television inventory, especially in the age of legalized sports gambling. Like, Maction is still something people are going to want to watch.
Absolutely. And let's be really real here. If we're talking about 42, 56 teams, whatever would be, it sounds like a lot of inventory, but that's not a ton of inventory every weekend, because you're going to have a couple off weeks. You might get a non-con here and there, whatever that we call that. So that's not going to be 11 a.m. Saturday morning to 11 p.m. Saturday night, a game Thursday, a game Friday, and throw in some other day. That's not all of that. So look what Conference USA did on Tuesday and Wednesday nights this year. It was awesome. And more conferences need to do that. And so you mentioned
very handsome man, by the way, calling that FIU Miami Vice game.
There you go. And so there will be other windows to potentially, I don't want to say dominate, but own. And then there'll be a totally different style of playoff to potentially go on. And maybe the bowls fall out of whatever is new, and there's a portion of the old bowl system that can stay with the next college football, whatever that is. Hell, maybe you go grab the FCS and say, you guys might be able to financially keep up with what we're going to do now, and we can all play on the same level, and bring in North Dakota State and Samford and all the other schools that could. Now we can all have this giant group of college football. I have no idea, but I Cole, do want.
I'm nominating you for commissioner of the new thing. I think you might have a shot.
I know. I think I have phone numbers for enough people that are smarter than me that could help me figure it out. And I'd probably make a bunch of drives down to Tuscaloosa and talk to a guy that has his own office in the stadium now, even though he wouldn't want to do it, and at least see if he would help me with it. But I just and then I don't say this like being mean or anything, but I honestly do worry about that. Like, why is someone not stepping up saying, I'm not saying this is where we have to go, but there's a good chance we are going to have to go here. Let's begin to figure this out. Yeah. And then there's how about this? I'll just throw this out to you before we go. What would let's just use UAB, since Trent Dilfer kind of started this whole conversation.
Yep.
It would probably take a private equity firm to own, quote, Bama, Texas, Texas A&M, LSU, Tennessee, Florida State, north of $1 billion. What would it take to go own UAB football right now? And I'm not saying push them to be Auburn or Georgia, but to dominate what they do wherever that's going.
To make them one of the best programs in whatever it is they're in.
Probably a tenth, if not less, to go and be a literal force at wherever else they're going next. So I don't think the private equity thing is only going to be saved for, these two mega conferences that are going to leave and play their own game, because just like Trent said, a lot of these people wanted to own NFL teams and for whatever reason couldn't. There's also going to be people that wanted to own an SEC or a Big Ten team that couldn't, and can go grab a Conference USA, an American, or a Sun Belt team and maybe go and do that.
It is going to be absolutely fascinating. Cole, you and I will be talking about this a lot, probably over the next 2 years. I ask that you release the unreleased Cube show.
Well, legally we can't do that yet.
Okay. So. Well, I'm gonna keep pushing you on this because we're gonna get that to the people. There's a Josh Pate episode too.
That's somewhere.
Nobody's heard.
Somewhere on a cloud.
All the secrets are revealed. So, yes. Cole, appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.